Welcome back. It is fight season. It's me, Jesse Rowe with Inside Fighting. We have a very interesting guest this week. We're joined by Brady, otherwise known as the non-binary ninja. Brady, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a wild couple of weeks, but it's an honor to be here. I follow your guys' page, love everything you guys post. And you may see me in the comment section sometimes, but yes, thank you for inviting me.
Yep, I've noticed you in the comments section, and obviously with some recent news that has sort of popped up with your visit onto the Overdogs podcast, which we're going to get to. I want to get to your interview with Mike Perry and the stuff with Jake Shields, so we will get to that. But first, I understand, so you're fighting at the NYC Warriors Cup on March 21st. Is that correct? Tell us a little bit about the event.
Yeah, so it's actually going to be a joint promotion. Two promotions are teaming up. I'm a fan of both of them. One is more K1 style, but of course, I'm a bigger fan of the clinch. So Muay Thai is what I'm going to be competing in. So it's Warriors Cup, and I think the other team is called K Series. Some of my teammates have fought for them. So I think it's going to be a bigger show than usual. I know Warriors Cup, normally, in my opinion, throws on the best Muay Thai show on the East Coast. And I'm super pumped because it's going to be a trans versus trans fight.
Right.
And are you cool with me explaining a bit more about this?
Yeah, go for it, please.
It's going to be in Queens, Melrose Ballroom, awesome venue. Going to be on pay-per-view, so if anyone wants the link, check out my stories in about a month. But I really love it because this is the promotion that for quite some time I wanted to make a trans versus trans lane in combat sports. And anytime I came close to doing it, others would get in my way. Whether it was a promotion that canceled a fight the week of with silly explanation, whether it was promotions making up rules that don't exist to deny me the opportunity to compete, or whether sometimes some promotions were like, listen, they're afraid to lose to you. So this was the first organization that in the Muay Thai world that took me serious enough and gave me an awesome opportunity. And back in October, fought in the first ever sanctioned Muay Thai fight, trans versus trans, and I won. And after that, what was really cool is I got all this new international attention where like Liam Harrison reached out, followed me, gave me words of encouragement, who I consider to be one of the greatest of all time, especially as a non-Thai. And basically, yeah, I'm blabbering a bit. I do have ADHD. But the person I'm supposed to be fighting, this trans athlete coming up in March, they actually won the first ever K1 style trans versus trans kickboxing match. And much like me, doesn't want to compete against females or natural born women, only wants to compete against those with male DNA, whether they are people who identify as trans or not. So I think the both of us are going to have a nice little battle. And yeah, but I'm super excited for this Warriors Cup.
But just to follow up on something that you just said, you mentioned how this is it's a trans fight, but it's you're only fighting another. I guess how you would I forgive me, I'm not trying to be in any way disrespectful, but
Yes.
the correct way of saying you're fighting another biological male who transitioned to being a woman, correct? You do not fight
Yes.
women who transitioned to being male
No.
or you do not, or sorry, you do not want to fight biological women is what
Yes,
I'm
that's it.
right.
All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, I don't think I'm so sorry.
You're
I
good.
don't think I would probably be willing to compete against someone who was born a female and transitioned to male. Even though I'm sure there's some out there that could give me a run for my money, especially when they're pumped up on some tests.
Right.
But to tell you the truth, I'm all about like I want the fairest fights possible or a challenge. And so that's why I'm still going out there challenging men, and I'm going out there trying to be remembered as, I guess, the greatest trans pioneer in combat sports.
So, do you just out of curiosity, like where do you stand on like trans, like a trans woman competing against women in sports? Where do you stand on that?
All right, so I know this is going to be kind of controversial.
Yeah.
How should I put this? I first of all don't think I should be the spokesperson for all people, but I am excited because I think I'm getting some attention and I'm showing people alternative ways that this could be done, right? Now, when it comes to combat sports, I'm completely against someone like myself, especially someone who went through a male puberty, competing against female athletes. Because once again, I'm all about being fair. And I know, having gone through a male puberty, I've got some muscle memory. I was an athlete back in the day. And my cardio is not as good as it used to be, but I've been able to regain a lot of my strength.
Mm.
Also have some very athletic, powerful females in my family, so I think I got a little genetic edge. But when it comes to combat sports, no. Do I think all the science is out there yet? No. I think what makes it controversial is this. Some people believe in prescribing maybe puberty blockers for younger trans identifying people under the age of 18. And currently, Donald Trump came out. He's trying to do an end to that. I also know the Supreme Court in Tennessee will be ruling shortly on it in Tennessee. But truthfully, I do think what a lot of the science does show, I just don't think it's really going to be something that's allowed or happening, is if some of these trans athletes jump on before they go through puberty, whatever a lot of the advantages that people refer to never kick in. Because I think a lot of the changes that do happen, like bone density, maybe bigger lungs and muscle mass, aggression, often comes in from when like the testosterone kicks in. And personally, I mentioned I have strong genetics for females in my family. Both my younger sister set the pull-up record in high school. My older sister was a top athlete and then blew her knee out, which kind of ended her career, but she was nationally ranked. But truthfully, I would never feel good transitioning and then stealing their hard-earned time, effort, talent, everything they did their whole lives to get there. And I think that is why a lot of people saw someone maybe like myself stepping into some competitions against some female athletes. And I think a lot of people, whether they fully understand it or not, they get upset. They're like, this is unfair. And I think a lot of people picture, what if that was my wife or my daughter? And so personally, that's my belief definitely with combat sports. Where I feel bad is I hear these stories, like the world is convinced there's like 20,000 me in every state trying to steal trophies from female athletes, right? And what I find kind of hysterical is with the laws and everything being created, you never hear about the trans males, right? So a lot of this, in my opinion, is tied to homophobia, right? But most states like don't have a trans kid competing on a team, right? And I remember reading about, I think it was in West Virginia, some middle school trans girl, and I saw pictures of her. She didn't go through puberty, was prescribed the blockers. No one would be able to tell that they were born technically a boy, right? Very petite, very tiny, playing with their friends, and then suddenly they're in the news, and suddenly they can't compete. And that's where, like, I just feel for that child, because I think sometimes, whether it's intramural, whatever, maybe we do let some people join some teams, right? But when it comes to, I think more of like the big competitive fields, the NCAA, people chasing scholarships, that's where I understand a lot of people make a big stink, especially if they see their daughter competing against a track athlete that is 6'5", was born male.
Yeah.
Uh, right. I'll even say like Leah Thomas. So I believe where I feel bad for Leah Thomas, that swimmer, she technically was following the rules that existed at the time and then
Yeah.
got ripped apart for it. So when she was being called a cheater, well, technically she wasn't breaking the rules that existed at the time, right? But then I sat back and I watched. Leah does have bigger shoulders than the average female. Little things I know. I think when testosterone kicks in, your growth plates might close, but guess what? Your shoulders get wider, right? So when I think of a sport like swimming, I could see someone being like, clearly Leah was born with an advantage that got bigger, maybe through the influence of a male puberty, right? But once again, I'm no geneticist, I'm no expert. Uh, what I will say is this: I think part of why I'm pushing for the trans lanes as well is there's so much conversation from both sides about like protecting women. And I'll be honest, an athlete like me, and just referring to some of the science that is coming out, it shows that being on hormones long enough, very often our cardio endurance will drop below the level of a trained female athlete.
Hmm.
And it makes sense to me because when you're full of testosterone, you produce more blood cells. Blood cells help us pump oxygen throughout the body, increases endurance, maybe adds an edge, right? So I'll tell you this: my biggest flaw at the moment, I gas so much easier than I used to, right?
Okay.
But that's why when I go into, and that's where like coaches will say it sometimes, I have the power. In fact, I hit harder than a lot of the men I train with. But to tell you the truth, I know I got to work on pacing myself because that's an area where I think the science shows, yeah, I've lost some of that male edge, right? And in some ways, there are some female athletes because they are technically not losing what they're used to. I'd almost say it's like this: being a race car, right? Take the gasoline out of that race car. It's not going to be moving, right? Whereas a female athlete is going to probably have mostly the same hormones, cycle will change and stuff. Perimenopause might mess some of that up, right? But a male athlete, guess what? They start dropping usually around in their 30s. And that's why we often see so many of these athletes decline in their 30s, especially the older they get, right? Without jumping on TRT. And so I think naturally people should understand that someone like myself, it's like I put myself through that whole decline, right?
Yeah,
Like,
because I did want to get this out of the way. You mentioned how you didn't like because I want to get to the Jake Shields stuff next. You mentioned
yeah.
how you didn't want to misgender anybody. Uh, eh, how am I supposed to refer to you? I apologize. What are the correct pronouns here?
All right. So you know what? Part of why I love doing these podcasts is I know I'm
Yeah,
educating people, and that's
yeah,
why I'm an open book.
right.
So truthfully, I think I would have been considered more of a binary trans woman, right?
Okay.
That's what I was going for, and in many ways, I still am, right? But for me, it got to a point where I would tell people, I kn- the idea of me feeling truly like female or even male doesn't really fit so much, especially nowadays. I feel like my experience, the things I've been through, the life I've lived, like I think it would be insulting to all three groups to act like we're all the same. All right? Now, guess what? I understand what it's like to get the male gaze sometimes, have inappropriate comments or men do things to me that the old me really did not understand, right? But guess what? I also will never have my monthly period. I won't have childbirth, right? And so over time, I started using more of the non binary label with the trans. Some people who are non binary don't transition whatsoever. They just reject the idea of like fitting into one or the other. In fact, I date a lot. I tell my straight friends, I'm like, yo, you guys are silly. If you warmed up to these non binary pronouns a bit more and learned some of it, when I log on the dating app, the number of people, gorgeous, beautiful people I see that were born female but just use they, them pronouns and want to reject the idea of, I guess, the binary, I'm like, yo, you guys are missing out, right? And some of them have actually started to warm up to it because guess what? They've seen some of the people I've gone on dates with, and they're like, you weren't joking, right? But for me, going back to answer the pronouns, I use both she and they.
Okay.
I'm also, being from New York City and the way I roll, I'm cool with being called bro and dude as long as it's not being used to try to hurt me. And I'll laugh it off, but I can tell the difference, right?
Yeah, well, a
Because
lot of
here's
people say they get upset when you don't adhere to the pronouns. Some people will they take it very personally. So you wouldn't take it personally if unless so long as it's not being done maliciously, is what you're saying?
yeah, so I'm pretty good at being able to tell when it's someone who's never met me, can't read me, and
Yeah.
I can tell when it's someone who is trying to be a jerk or cover up their own tracks, right?
Okay.
So, like, for example, I will walk in, let's say I have a dress on, right? I'll walk in to, I'll give you a funny story actually. Shake Shack. Have you ever been to a Shake Shack?
Yeah.
So, like, I walk into places, I get hit on by lesbians, bi people, and straight men, as long as I'm not talking, right?
Okay.
All the time, right? And what I hate is so many people are like, the transphobes are like, until they actually see it and witness it or whatever, right? But where was I going with this?
Can I
I wanted
ask,
to,
does that
yeah,
ever happen in like boxing gyms with like or like MMA gyms or anything with some of the fighters? Like, does that ever happen?
as in like hitting on me and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Like, do any like the male fighters, for example, or do they ever do they
Yeah.
all right? Do they ever surprise you in that way?
So what's funny is I will keep some people secret
Yeah.
because there are some people who treated me with a lot of respect, and eventually they reveal that maybe they have a taste for someone like me. But if you were to look at who they date women, right? And I think that's what confuses people sometimes. But like, you may get a kick out of this. I'm gonna say it. Probably won't get back to him. What is his name? I was at a celebrity boxing event, and the former world champ, one of the greats. It's slipping my mind right now from the '90s. Big guy,
Black black guy,
Riddick Bowe.
Riddick Bowe. Okay.
So he walks in, and imagine like everyone flocks to him to get his attention. Right? Tons of women are there. Guess who he sees like in the corner, 25 feet away? Me.
Okay.
Where he's busy blowing kisses and winking, and he kept trying to talk to me, and I just kept freezing and running away. I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna reveal his voice. I don't know how he's gonna react, right? But it was flattering, right? Uh, Without revealing too much, this is a little creepier. I had someone who technically is a boxing champ at the moment, was recently on the pay per view, married, uh, who video chatted me, pleasuring himself,
Oh
and
wow.
wanted me to like partake.
Okay.
Right? So like,
This is a
uh,
big name boxer.
big enough, I will say.
Okay.
Big enough.
Okay. Is there a specific card that they were on that you can say without saying their name?
I feel like it would
Okay.
reveal too much. Also, I'll say this. I think if I know this person could technically open doors for me
Okay.
in the fight world.
All right. Fair
Right?
enough.
So I want to make sure I don't blow up their spot too
No,
much.
that's fine. That's fine. Just curious because I know that you were talking a little bit about that on the Mike Perry podcast. You didn't get a chance to get into it very much, but what did happen was, they asked you about Jake Shields and
Yes.
some of his comments because in the past he said that he wanted to fight 10 trans men, I believe is what he wanted to do,
Yes. Yes.
and then so they threw out the idea of you fighting Jake Shields in dirty boxing. Um, have you seen his response? Because he did respond to the to what you said.
Yeah, I guess it depends on which response,
He's
right? But
well, he said I'd beat the crap out of that thing. That was what he said.
yes, so that was, I find it interesting because originally he ran to Twitter and posted to his followers saying that I wouldn't show, just like all the other trans challengers in the past.
Yeah.
But I think he quickly became aware, and I think he knew this all along. I will show. Uh, Whether win or lose, right? Especially if a bag's being thrown my way with money, right? So I think he realized too, I need to talk about this, and I need to get some story out there to explain either why I will fight this person or not, right? Uh, so what I find interesting too is we first crossed paths about a year or two ago online, where he found me in the comment section and started attacking me, calling me a man and a failed male athlete. And he called me a cheat. And what I actually told him at the time was, I want to talk about cheating. First of all, do your research. I fight men and other trans. Secondly, you cheated. You got popped back in the day for spirolactone, which actually is what they prescribe trans women as a testosterone blocker. If you're on it long enough, it will get rid of all your tea, right? But it's also used as a diuretic. And from what I've read, I know Cyborg was caught with it. And one of the reasons they believe they caught her with it, I think it helps mask steroid use, I heard.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, so there are female fertility drugs that are used to basically at the end. This happens a lot in baseball, pro baseball, where the baseball players who are on steroids will actually use a female fertility drug as a way to mask the end of a steroid cycle, and then so you basically like it. A lot of guys end up getting testing positive for the fertility drug and not the steroid themselves. So yeah.
all right, so yeah, but I'll say this. I think he respected the response. And at the time, he did apologize and said, I had his support, right? But then, of course, when Mike brought it up, I remember feeling two things. One is, well, I'm all about marketing. I'm never going to miss an opportunity like this, right? And to me, when I hear that he wanted to fight 10 trans men born female, I just thought it was so ridiculous. And I think he talked about it in his response later on this podcast. What and clearly it's like, hey, everyone, we're gonna go let him beat up trans men, but no one's gonna complain if it's the other way around, right? No, that's what you guys complain about, right? Uh, he also offered $200,000 of his own money after I think it was originally 100,000, and he kept saying people wouldn't show up or backed out. So I was like, yo, I'm gonna A, reference that, and B, I didn't like how he attacked me and called me a man and all that stuff. I don't think he would have used those words if he knew right away, like that, how I compete, but still. And that's what I think the world needs to stop doing. And then to see him double down and use like the word thing, right? I just can't help but notice that a lot of the hateful comments that are coming my way, well, they're using the words that he used, right? His fans are like picking it up. So I'm being called thing, it, all that stuff. The best part is I laugh at most of them. Uh, I've been through a lot, so I have thick skin.
Sure.
And that's where I do think I'm actually the perfect trans opponent for Jake Shields. And I've been getting, so I know they reshared another post today, but if you were to see my DMs, there are so many people, and some of them, what makes me laugh, some of them are pro fighters. And they're like, yo, I hear in his voice, I think he is actually afraid to fight you. Because I'll be honest, I'm not the world's greatest fighter, not even close. In fact, when I first jumped back into this fight game, oh my God, I just got lucky. But what I love about my current coach, what he shares with everyone at the gym, and he's a killer, he's like, yo, I lost my first 3 fights, right? Like, don't give up. And what do I know? I'm just getting better, especially with the Muay Thai, right? And what do I have a good skill set in? Elbows. And dirty boxing is fists, elbows, you can take
Well,
it to the ground, no grappling. Jake is known for grappling.
Well, that's
I
what I was
think
going to ask. Well, why not? Why not? Because I know that obviously you're doing the Mike Perry podcast, but Jake he's not known for his striking. He's known for
yes.
being a jujitsu guy. Why not Would you be opposed to an MMA fight with Jake Shields? Is that something that you've completely ruled out? Because it seems like that would be the most. I don't know. I don't want to call it level playing field in this. I'm just saying. What would be your response to that?
You know what? So here is the truth, and this is where everyone's gonna think I'm crazy. I would be crazy to take that fight, but I would because, like Jake said, everyone backs down. I never back down. In fact, part of my story, and this is why I jumped more to the Muay Thai world rather than the boxing. I wasn't being treated right as a trans athlete. So let's just say 2 boxing fights I had. The guys I fought, I was told to make a certain weight. Neither of them made weight. And so I'll tell you the most extreme one in particular. We were supposed to fight at 159. I I was testing to see how low I could go, and I was being stupid, first of all. But I weighed in at 152.4, right? I wanted to see how low I could get, how sucked out I could get. My opponent showed up weighing 179, right? He didn't even try to cut. By the way, I have 10 years of age on this character as well. And so imagine the commission of this state was like, this fight is off, or you got to go eat and drink enough to weigh in again to be within 6 or 7 pounds. So that's what I went and did. Meanwhile, my coach was like, "I'm sorry, I can't support this." He's like,
Right.
"This, you're gonna get murdered. This is stupid." And I remember telling my coach, like, I went through a camp. Like, I don't know how many opportunities I'm gonna get, and I never back down. Here's the truth: I went out and I got rocked, right? But I'm also proud of the fact that I went out and got rocked. And I know I've gotten so much better since then because now I actually have legit coaches and killers that believe in me, are in my corner. Most of my fights, my coaches told me they were going to be there and then bailed out last minute. I go into fights without coaches. Now I have these coaches that show up. I do. I grew up in Huntington. I do have a strong wrestling background. My dad was a state champ. Uh, when I first was getting back involved in this, I was training with this guy Manimal. He fought for Bellator. I think double black belt under Matt Serra. Teaches there, teaches at Longo. He used to bring me in with the people he was training, and he wouldn't tell them anything about me, right? And imagine he would be like, "All right, she's gonna lay in the ground, and you got to keep her down," right? I was tossing these guys around, like. So here's the truth: I'm explosive, and I'm super strong, and a lot of people. My other jiu-jitsu gym I used to go to, guy, double black belt, won all these tournaments, very well known. I remember when I took him down with a double leg. Just I was like, all right, I'm gonna be thrown in something crazy soon. But here's the truth: I think Jake might be a little surprised by my strength. I know he's a superb grappler. I know he would probably murder me, but I think he would be surprised that like give him a little harder time than he's probably expecting. Uh, Seeing him on Bully Beatdown, seeing his career as a fighter, he's never been known for his hands. I think he's had 2 knockouts, maybe ever. Uh, so here's the truth. I actually thought of something like this, maybe. I, at one point, was being offered a combat jiu-jitsu match through Subversive, where you get to, like, slap people
Oh yeah,
while,
yeah, yeah. Right, right.
right?
Yeah.
And then part of what happened was I reached out to the gym to get me ready, and then guess what? They told me that they didn't accept people like me at that gym. So guess what? At the time, I didn't really have a gym I wanted to prepare. But maybe if Jake is down to do dirty boxing, we could do combat jitsu. Or I'm down if he does the dirty boxing and he wants an MMA follow up. I'm down for that too, especially if we're
Okay.
both getting paid. And here's the thing: I think deep down Jake does respect me. I think part of him has to save face right now, and that's why he's saying some of the stuff he is.
Yeah.
And all it takes is one punch or elbow to win a fight. But would I do the MMA? Yes. I would try my best to not get taken down. I would try
Yeah.
my best to keep it standing. Uh, but yeah, I'm down. I'm basically down for almost anything. But clearly, dirty boxing, I think, is going to be the new hot thing. I'll also do bare knuckle with him if he wants. I'm down for whatever.
Last thing, what's your message to Jake Shields now if he's watching this?
All right, Jake. So I've seen some of the podcasts. I've seen your responses. And what I will say is, I think you're at least acknowledging that I would give you a harder time than maybe fighting the 10 trans men you were planning on fighting. Gonna throw this out, Jake. I would love to fight you still. I think it would go viral. We could do multi-format if you want. Maybe we flip a coin and do 3 rounds. Every round it's something different. Or I'll throw this out. Maybe you could invite me on your podcast, Jake, and we could have a real long talk about trans athletes. I would love to pick Jake's mind, find out more about why and how he thinks the way he does. And I do know this. I don't think he's so crazy about this trans fighter, Alana McLaughlin. Uh, and I know Alana got a lot of attention for jumping. She was the first trans pro MMA fighter, I think, after Fallon Fox. She fought a French girl, female, choked her out for, I think, Combate League Global. And to tell you the truth, part of me is like, yeah, maybe the two of us can make history of the first trans versus trans MMA fight. And then part of me is just wondering, if Jake is willing to grow a bit, maybe he'd want to be one of my coaches to get me ready for that fight.
Wow.
I don't know. Maybe we could become more. I'm all about restorative justice and conversations, right?
So you're open to the idea of working with your biggest critics just as much as you are going up against them.
Yes, but at the same time, I gotta be treated with respect and dignity, right? Man, I'm not gonna be some clown that's being used or laughed at, right?
Sure.
And I know some people are afraid when they see some of this stuff that's what's happening, and I'm telling them all, I'm like, no, I'm riding this wave. We're all benefiting, and how else will the world change? Right now, especially when laws were passed saying someone like me doesn't exist anymore, I think the more people I talk to that don't know someone like me or understand someone like me, especially those who might be against it, the more I can change this world. And if we keep the division going, it's just going to get worse and worse. Yeah.
All right. Well, Brady, thank you so much. The non-binary ninja fighting March 21st at the New York City Warriors Cup versus Gita Marie Figueroa. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you sort of just giving me your time here.
Yeah, same here. I'm sorry if I blabbered too much.
You're fine. Thank you so much. All right.
Peace out.